Hi. Hi. So today we're going to talk about the power of Wastah in Lebanese speech. Remember when we were talking a little bit about confianza and palanca, I talked to you and I said we're going to talk about a similar subject with regards to Lebanese speech, which is Wastah. And you can see that this information comes from Mabu Hashem. Okay, so what is Wastah? Wastah is really, we can think of it as clout or having connections, networking, recommendations, a go-between for people with different interests and so forth. Um, and as I said, just as is similar to Confianza, we have issues that, if you want to get a job, if you want to get a wife, if you want to get a date, if you want to get a passport, a visa, a car, any other commodity, you need Wasta. That can resolve conflicts. It can facilitate government decisions, solve bureaucratic problems. Now, and this is the interesting statement, right? This is the one that really gives you an idea of the difference between an individualist culture and a collectivist type culture. The statement here is one does not do for oneself what might be better done by a friend or a friend's friend, right? In our individualist culture, you can think that one should not ask somebody else to do something for them that they can do for themselves, right? This is almost the exact opposite idea, right? One shouldn't do for oneself what might better be done by a friend or a friend's friend, right? If somebody else can do it better, then they should do it instead of you doing it. So what are factors that influence Wastah? Well, one is religion. So in Lebanon, your religion must be stated on your national ID. So you must identify what religion you are on your ID. Positions are given primarily on the basis of religious quotas and secondarily on qualifications. So if we need this many people from this sect and this many people from this sect, that's what the first option is going to be. And religious sects have their own schools. So if you're a Sikh, you would go to one school. If you're a Sunni, you would go to another school. That type of mindset that each sect has their own school. Now, with regards to kinship, right, which can, we think of that in sense of families, where males are strongly favored. And Zayamship is what we call political leadership, and that's more often inherited than learned. So, in the sense, you can think of it in the sense that somebody is born into a certain kind of political family, and they will inherit their place as opposed to kind of learn political leadership, right? They learn it through being in a specific family. So, Museara is a communication style which will emphasize commonalities, right? So we'll talk about respect, magnanimity, politics, conciliation. But the key is that as we talk, we communicate in ways that emphasize our commonalities as opposed to our differences. So we find these moments and these points of connection. And you can think of it, again, as a collectivist culture as opposed to an individualist culture. In an individualist culture, we're often looking for the distinctions between different things. But in a Lebanese culture, we're looking for the similarities between things, the commonalities. If you can't find commonalities, then in fact you won't be successful. So you can think that we're in a political cycle right now in the U.S., and being in the cycle in the U.S., so this political cycle, you're going to see a lot of ads, political ads. And the political ads are going to say, my opponent is an idiot, or my opponent doesn't care about people, or my opponent makes bad decisions. I'll make great decisions. I am a perfect leader. I'm a wonderful person, right? So it's creating these distinctions. In Lebanese culture, that's not going to be effective, right? Because that's not what people are looking for. People are looking for the ability to create connections and commonalities. So the more commonalities that a candidate could express with people, that would be more favorable to that individual if you were in one of these types of cultures. So, I'm sorry. So Wastah to work, you need what's called a wasit. And a wasit is the kind of go-between person. So performing museara, right, having those languages of commonality, right, often requires what we call a wasit. And a wasit is a third party. We can think of a wasit as kind of a mediator. Right? A wasit tries to appease disputants and prevent conflict from escalating. So you can think of that person again like as a mediator. We often hire mediators to do many things from negotiating contracts to dealing with conflicts, so that we don't have to go to court and so forth. So we use mediators to be able to work between groups. Now, for a wasit, in this culture, and in many collectivist cultures, they honor people who are elderly as more wise and more experienced. So, in a lot of collectivist cultures, there is this kind of hierarchy of age. So, a wasit is usually a senior citizen in a community. So, how does Wastah work, right? So, that's most often used to find jobs for relatives or close friends and to solve conflicts, right? The extended family works as an employment agency to find a wasit to help get a job. So we all know each other, we know a lot of other people, and we try to find a person, a go-between that will be able to get me that job, right? In the same sense, right, with Remember Confianza, that you need to find that person who's connected, who can get you into that position, who can get you that job. In conflict situations, the wasit's job is to conciliate rather than to judge, to try to get people to moderate the interaction, and to try to conciliate, try to get to calm nerves, as opposed to judge and make a ruling. Conciliation is intended to lead to compromise through mutual concession. So, what if you gave a little of this and he gave a little of that? Would you be all right? Those types of things. This notion of trying to get to a point of conciliation through compromise. And Wasit tries to create a supportive climate of communication. Let's not argue. Let's not get overheated. Let's not, battle each other. Let's find ways that we can work together. So when conflict is from members from two different clans, wasits from both sides try to prevail over their own members, and then the two wasits come together. So if you're from two separate clans, obviously remember you had to have your religion on your card. You have to work with a wasit from your own religion, from your own clan. So a wasit within a clan can work with the people in the clan, but if you're working with beyond different clans, you wouldn't work with a wasit who's not from your clan, because remember, we're talking about a collectivist group. So if you're in that situation, right, and your conflict is with somebody who's in another group, what you need to do then is have your wasit work with the people in your clan, their wasit will work with the people in their clan, and then the two wasits will be able to come together. That can smooth the situation, because in collectivist cultures, there's very clearly a in-group and an out-group mentality. So that if you are functioning from a sense of you're not going to negotiate comfortably and easily with somebody who's in an out group. So what I want to kind of focus on at this point is, if you think about, right, confianza and wastah, we can think of these as communication and cultural patterns in communities that were former colonized areas, right? So Lebanon was formerly colonized, Colombia was formerly colonized. So when we think about, right, if you think about what Sorrells is talking about in a lot of situations, she's talking about these communities that, these kind of post-colonial communities, these communities that at one point were colonized, and they're no longer colonized, and how the colonizers are, normally the aggressors, they're the dominators, they're the power, and so forth. But you can also think now what it actually would be like to live in one of those communities as they function as a collectivist community, right? If you don't have connections, it's going to be really hard for you to move from one class to another within those cultures. If you don't have a connections, it's going to be very hard for you to be able to effectively just be successful in those communities. If you're an outsider and you come in, it's going to be very, very hard for you to be able to function because you're not going to have the connections to be able to necessarily function. So, for instance, if you're if you're an outsider and you have to move to Lebanon, or if you're an outsider and you have to move to Colombia, good luck getting your phone hooked up, right? Good luck getting basic services. And so, we want to be able to, I want to be able to mediate some of the ways that people can maybe respond to Sorrell's, right? Because Sorrell's kind of pitches this, anti-colonial power, anti-power argument. And I think that sometimes people can forget what it actually looks like in areas that aren't necessarily the areas that have the cultural power, have the financial power, the economic power, the military power, and so forth, and not think of those areas as perfectly idyllic, and think of the dominant civilizations as necessarily evil or problematic, right? Everybody has their own issues, and you want to be able to see communities from the sense of of a realistic look at who they are, right? We don't want to say America's all great and all these countries are all bad. We don't want to say all these other countries are bad and America's great. We want to be able to look at each and fully be able to critically analyze what the culture is like and what the positive elements of the culture are, and also at some point be able to think in a sense and make personal judgments on what we would consider to be a negative element of that culture, but not to do it in a way that that is uninformed, and not to do a way that's particularly ethnocentric or discriminatory, but to take an honest, critical look at all cultures and in comparing cultures. So hopefully, and we'll move a little bit more in that direction now as the class continues to go. We're going to be focusing a little bit more on individual cultures, and we'll talk about those a little bit more as we move forward, and we'll start thinking about those in relationship to power and social justice and so forth. Thank you.